wrestling, gumbo to grits, politics to poetry, and all things Southern in between, this is Take on the South. Produced by the Institute for Southern Studies in the McCausland College of Arts and Sciences at the University of South Carolina, Take on the South explores the highs and lows of the American South, examines the truth and fictions of the country's most distinctive region, and picks the brains of some of its most accomplished students. To understand the South, you need to take it on, and that's what we'll be doing. Join us as we take on the South. Universities can be complicated places to run, and many of the decisions that shape their futures are the product of careful, informed, and often visionary deliberation and leadership. We know that university presidents, provosts, deans, faculty, staff, students, and local and national communities all have an important say in what universities do and why. Sometimes less understood and appreciated is the patient and critical work done by university boards of trustees. Today on the show, we are lucky enough to have as our guest the chairman of the board of the University of South Carolina's Board of Trustees, Thad Westbrook. We will pick his redoubtable brains about what he does as chairman, his thoughts on the future of the university, and just as important, his background and how and why he ended up where he is today. Chairman Westbrook, Thad, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. And this is actually my first time in Gambrell Hall in several years. So to be able to come and visit and see the Institute for Southern Studies again, a place where I spent a lot of time, is a very warm feeling, and it's really nice to be back.
And it's especially warm because it's July.
It is.
And the air conditioning is laboring today, I have to say.
We'll have to get somebody on that.
We have to get, you're the man to do this. So there's a lot to talk about, but I'd like to start with the basics, Thad, that what is it you do as chairman of the Board of Trustees? I mean, what does the job entail, and how did you come to do this?
So the chairman of the Board of Trustees is a trustee that's elected from his or her peers. And so 3 years ago, my colleagues were kind enough to elect me as chair. And my responsibility is to help shepherd the board in fulfilling its mission. And really, our mission is to serve the University of South Carolina and the state of South Carolina. When we are having our conversations, particularly just trustees, if you were to do a word bubble and look at what terms I use the most, mission is the word that would probably pop up, because when we're having our conversations, we're looking at, all right, what is our role? What is the role of the university? And we're talking about our focus on educating students, educating young people, and developing knowledge through research. That's our primary mission. And so my job as chair is to make sure the board is fulfilling that mission. And we're setting agenda. We're dealing with obviously financial issues and budget issues for the board, and making those decisions, policy decisions. And we are a board for a system. So we govern Columbia, the flagship institution, but we also have 8 other institutions in our system throughout the state. Our job is to look at access and affordability for higher education in South Carolina. And so that's a responsibility we take very seriously. And one that as chairman, it's my job to make sure our agenda is set in a way where we are in alignment with that mission and working very closely with the administration who carries out the mission for the university. So really it's a role where you're the good shepherd for the group, but also making sure everyone is working together and focused on the mission.
And how long have you been doing this?
I've been on the board since 2010.
Okay.
Majority of the trustees are elected by the state legislature. As many of our listeners will know, that we're a strong legislative state, and the state legislature elects 16 of the 20 trustees that are on our board.
Okay. All right. There's a awesome responsibility on your shoulders and the shoulders of the Board of Trustees generally. Obviously, you find this to be a satisfying job, right? But sometimes does that responsibility weigh very heavily?
It does. There is a burden there to, one, you're serving your alma mater. All of us on the board The electeds are graduates of the university from one of the schools. It's a burden to make sure we are doing our job in alignment with the state, and because we're taxpayer supported.
Right, and that alignment, it's hard to maintain because sometimes the optics shift.
It does.
Right.
It does. And you're dealing with national issues, and then you're dealing with stakeholders within the university who have varying interests, and so sometimes it's a balancing act. It's a volunteer job. We do it because we really care about the university. I do remember when I was running, I was fairly young at the time when I was running for the board, and running means talking to legislators, and explaining to them why they should support your candidacy to be on the board. Other states have governors who appoint them to trustees to boards. Others run publicly, statewide elections. But here it's the state legislature. And I had one more senior member of the legislature who came out to me, and he was clearly supporting one of the other candidates. And he said, "Aren't you just running so you can get good football tickets?"
Oh my goodness!
And so, as a young person hearing that, I know I don't have his vote, and so I actually responded to him and it's had to say, "Look, I already have really good football tickets. That's not why someone does this job. And if you think that's the reason I'm running, don't vote for me.
That's right.
Because you do not want someone on the board who's doing it for football tickets or anything like that.
Right.
Because it's a really incredible responsibility for our state." We take on some pretty difficult issues. One of the most important things we do is the selection of a president. I ran the search that brought Dr. Amaritas here, and that was a very stressful time, particularly coming out of some prior things that we dealt with. It was an incredible responsibility, and approaching that, I wanted to make sure that the university community had a voice in what we were doing. And as part of that, we held 31 stakeholder meetings with stakeholders inside the university and outside the university. And we were looking to gather everyone's input on what they're looking for in the next president. We did that before we wrote the position profile. And so that was a very thoughtful way of going about the process that led to I believe, a very successful and wonderful selection as president.
I remember it well, and I thought this was the most transparent, informed, and democratic search I'd ever seen at this university. I mean, it was open from the beginning, and I thought those listening sessions were absolutely essential as a kind of stakeholder participation, right? So, no, you're not doing it because of football tickets. Maybe soccer tickets, though, right?
Well, depending on, we've got some real opportunities. And, after the experience we had last summer with Liverpool and Man United coming here, and obviously a Liverpool FC fan across the table.
Well, I had my moment.
We're raising our profile, yes.
You're definitely raising. I mean, if you'd have told me 30 years ago that Manchester United and Liverpool would be playing at Williams Price, I would have said, I don't think so.
Well, and we have Fluminense here for the Club World Cup. We hosted them, and we're hopeful that for the World Cup we'll be able to host some other national teams.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. You are one of the most prolific members of the board that writes a lot of op-eds, and I want to get to those at the end of our conversation because I think those op-eds are really well done. They're very thoughtful. And they kind of give us a sense of where you see the university going and some of the priorities. So I want to circle back to that. But, let's go back a bit before all of that. You are definitely a product of South Carolina, right? I mean, tell us about your background, your mom and dad, where were you born, where did you go to school, that kind of thing.
Sure. Born in Columbia at Baptist Hospital. My parents lived in West Columbia. I grew up in West Columbia. Out near South Congaree and Pine Ridge. I'm a graduate of Airport High School.
Yep.
So I am local, and of course, I was raised in a very traditional middle-class Southern family. But my father was one who actually had a bit of a profile because he was a judge. He was a state legislator for a few years. Governor Riley appointed him to an unexpired term on a family court bench, and then became a circuit court judge. And so, through that, of course, he was someone who had access and was a known individual. And so a lot of the issues for the state were ones that were discussed in my home. I remember my father as a young legislator. He was a young Democrat from Lexington County. I think the last House member to be elected a Democrat in Lexington County. But I remember him with his maps of the state on the floor because it was redistricting.
Yeah.
And he was working with Governor Riley to draw the lines, and they were drawing lines down power line routes and creeks and everything to identify certain precincts. But a lot of the issues of the state were discussed in my home. I had my grandmother in Florence that we would visit, so I had some ties to the PD and hear stories out of the PD. My father's parents were originally out of Anderson, so it had ties to the upstate and stories about the Mill Hills and that kind of thing. In fact, we would always talk about my grandmother, who was a Wynn, and she would make it clear to us that she grew up just off the Mill Hill. She did not live on the Mill Hill. Now, she lived on Tribble Street in Anderson, and I visited Tribble Street. She lived on the Mill Hill, and so she was, maybe not really a pejorative, but a Linhead. Sure. I mean, her family was on the Mill Hill, and so those are stories that I would hear about as well. I read several years ago Tony Horwitz's book, Confederates in the Attic, and the stories of the South and the Civil War. Those are things that I heard about growing up, particularly from my grandfather, and so some of those stories that I identified with some of the things that I would learn from him. So the experience was, I think, very traditional. Southern Baptist upbringing in South Carolina. That was one, though, that was informed by a lot of the issues of the day in the early 80s and into the 90s as a young person in my household with some of those conversations. People also calling, people called their representative at home, and we didn't have cell phones, of course, so they called the landline, I'd answer it, and someone would want to speak to my father about getting their dirt road paved or an issue with the mail or trash. So
what an invaluable experience, though, Thad.
I really benefited from it. It gave me insight and access that a lot of people don't have. And from that, I feel like I have a responsibility to kind of continue in some public service to help serve, because I was very fortunate in having that access.
But also willing to look at the maps that are on the floor, willing to overhear conversations, willing to ask, right? I mean, lots of people do have that background, but they don't participate in it. There's something about you that made you curious about it, and that kind of grassroots feel to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you graduate from Airport High, and then you come to the University of South Carolina, where you major not in history, but political science, and you attend the South Carolina Honors College. And then you decide to do a minor. Could you tell us what your minor was?
Yeah, Southern Studies.
That's right.
Yeah. I was on this hallway a good bit.
the wisdom suddenly came, right?
Yes.
The clarity, I must do Southern Studies as a minor. And then you went on to the University of South Carolina School of Law to do your JD. What did you do after that?
So right after that, I was a federal law clerk. So I finished law school, became a federal law clerk for G. Ross Anderson in Anderson.
Okay.
So I spent a year in Anderson.
Circling back to the roots, right?
Yep. I saw the high school where both my grandmother attended and my father attended, and as a Southern Studies minor, I read about Red Hills and Cotton and the stories of the upstate and Linhead. So a lot of the older stories were very familiar to me. But I clerked for a year as a federal law clerk, and then joined Nelson Mullins here in Columbia, where I had clerked as a law clerk in law school.
Okay. So. All right. So let me ask you this, and I'm genuinely curious about this. What did Southern Studies, doing a minor in Southern Studies, what could it possibly teach somebody who grew up in the South with that kind of access, that kind of vantage point? Like, what did you learn by doing a Southern Studies minor that you didn't know before?
I learned that a lot of my assumptions about the South were wrong.
Okay.
And what it did was it helped me have a more full picture of the South and as a region. It's a very unique region. There's a reason why when I would study with Dr. Edgar, that he would talk about how Europeans in particular would be interested in studies of the South.
It's true.
And I think while I was here as an undergraduate student, I don't mean to talk out of school, but you were working on your PhD.
I was.
At that time.
I was. I'm ancient, really.
No, not at all, because there wasn't that much difference between me finishing my undergraduate degree here and your PhD. So, but it really informed my perspective. I mean, really, I was very close to Walter Edgar, and he was a mentor of mine. I credit him with teaching me how to write. So if you read something that I write and there's a problem, that's because I forgot what Walter Edgar taught me. Because he taught me very well. He was very hard on us. I took a couple of his seminar classes where he would grade each class performance. So you do readings, you come in, you participate in class, and we would get a grade the next week or the next class about how we did. And of course, the writing was very challenging. But to study with him was very important because he would get calls from people across the country. I remember one time he got a call. And he told us in class about a call from a New York Times reporter who was working on a story on race. Yep. And so he wanted to call a scholar in the South. And Walter began to challenge him and said, well, why aren't you calling someone from the south of Boston? Or how about Ohio, where some of these same issues are going on? Yeah. He's like, I'm just interested in talking to someone from the South.
I bet there's Brent Stapleton. I bet that's who it was.
I don't know the name. But
well, and I'll tell you why. See, Walter is our bridge, oddly enough, because when you were working on your thesis, Walter told me about you, and I kind of heard of you and got to know about you through Walter. And then Walter and I became very close, and I had the honor of inheriting this from him. So I like this connect. It's actually a very Southern connection,
yes,
right?
It is.
This is how it works, right? So yeah, I mean, but Walter is, and still, the authority on this.
He is, and he taught us that the term redneck is an ethnic pejorative,
right?
And the way it's used nationally,
right?
And so that was eye-opening for me. Because people use the term redneck around town, and where I grew up in West Columbia all the time. Yeah, and he took offense to it. Originally from Alabama, but the scholar owns South Carolina history with second to none, and he was very vocal in what he had observed and what ideas he wanted us to at least consider. And I appreciated him because he didn't tell you what to think. Right. He gave you access to information, and then you draw your own conclusions. And anyone who will share with me their perspective, or even this morning, I had a member of our faculty sent me an article that is intended for me to just consider a different viewpoint, which I appreciate. And that is that's what Walter did for us. He challenged us, and he really broadened our understanding, particularly about this region, a very unique region, but broadened our understanding of what it means to be someone from the South.
Did you ever find yourself sort of scratching your head thinking, wow, I never knew that?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Not only through the readings, but just what he was working on. He was working on South Carolina a history at that time. Yep. And so the different chapters he was working on, and we talk about it, and I was learning. There's so much to learn, and obviously he's forgotten more than I ever have known, but every day was a new opportunity to learn something.
Well, and that book, South Carolina, A History, I remember reading that in manuscript form. He brought it round to the house. And, it's a long book when it's printed. Imagine it in manuscript form. It was like this thing, like bloody hell.
Reams of paper.
They were. I must be a good friend to you, right? And I told him, I said, this is going to be a huge hit. And he wasn't sure that it would be. And because what he did is he made a small state's history big, right? Because a lot of those themes that he covers are national themes, not just South Carolina themes. And I think you're entirely right. His standards were second to none. He made you reach, but not in a way that was conformist, but in a way that was expansive. Do you remember what your thesis was about?
Yeah, so I wrote about the rise of the Republican Party in South Carolina, but not in a partisan way. That I was trying to understand how people that we studied historically were called Democrats,
Yeah.
but then today, at that time, this is the late 90s,
Yeah.
mid to late 90s, they were Republicans.
Right.
And then the opposite being true. So it was called one party state with a question mark, the rise of the Republican Party in South Carolina. And that thesis was an opportunity for me to really kind of delve into the question. I was answering a question and trying to understand better how this happened, because on our bookshelf growing up, we had Primary State was a book on the shelf which was written about South Carolina as the Democratic primary state, where the primary decided the election.
Yep.
So the general election did not matter. And once the Democrat Party decided who their nominee for governor would be, that was it.
That was it.
The Republicans really did not have a voice.
Yep.
And so I was trying to figure out how did that change. So it has three sections. There's a historical analysis, including politicians who switched parties, Floyd Spence, Strom Thurmond, David Beasley, but also then kind of a current look at where we were, and that involved two things. I did interviews of state leaders. So I interviewed Governor Beasley and Speaker Wilkins, who's now my law partner at Nelson Mullins, and Lee Bandy, the sports reporter, Jim Drummond. Lee Bandy, a political reporter at the state, Jim Drummond, a political reporter, a couple other state leaders. And then I also did a survey. And so I took a postcard and mailed it to every county party chair in the state and asked them to answer a few questions. And then they self-addressed, they send it back. Then I went and interviewed some of them. So I met with the county party chair, Republican county party chair for Allendale County. There are not that many Republicans in Allendale County, and so I was trying to understand why they were Republicans and what they were doing there. But then I also interviewed Democratic leaders and what their perspective was on the future of the Democratic Party in the state. And then the last part, I'm answering where I think the things are going in South Carolina. And at that time, it's before the 98 election, where David Beasley lost after taking a very brave stand on the Confederate flag, which is probably the bravest political decision I've ever seen a politician make.
Sure.
Which I think led to him losing that election. And then, of course, Governor Hodges came in with a pro-education platform and instituted the state lottery. And then, then Mark Sanford's elected.
Yep.
And so I'm looking at a few years before all that, where things are heading in our state. And now, of course, there's a question, less of a question about the Republican primary. And that person who wins the Republican primary for statewide office, over the last few cycles, they've won the general. Yeah. And the Democrats have had trouble fielding candidates that can be competitive. So there's a real important moment now as I look back for both parties, one trying to maintain the hold on power, and the other trying to identify statewide candidates who can be competitive and get past that 43, 44%, 45% statewide generally. So it's a fascinating time.
It really is. So in a nutshell, what was the pivot? What was the single most important thing in which that Republican Party switched from the Democratic Party and became the modern Republican Party? Was there one event, or was it just accumulation?
I wouldn't say it's one event. I mean, to be candid, a lot of the changes were around issues of race and the civil rights movement.
Right.
And so that's where some of it happened. But then you dealt with a phenomenon in South Carolina where there really was a bent towards smaller, more limited government. And so with that and fiscal policy, you started to see a distinction between the southern states, the states that had many of which had supported Kennedy at one time, and so who now are Reagan states, and they are solidly in the Republican corner. So it's I can't say it's one thing, and it's not just race, but early on that was some of what was going on, and we just have to be candid about that the impact of that issue on some of the changes.
You ever thought about updating the thesis and publishing it?
Oh, I have not.
You
I have
might
not
want to
thought about it.
consider
Yeah,
this
so,
because well, as I'm listening to you, what you wrote is as relevant today as when you wrote it then. And there's deep historical research done on that. Like you couldn't do some of that research today. Some of those people in Allendale no longer exist, right?
Right. It would be a fascinating project. I need the time to do it.
Right, because you got nothing else to do,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, my side job as a chair of the board takes a little bit of time, but no, it would be a fascinating project. I will say the one time I feel like I impressed my father from time to time, but the one that was very meaningful was when I was able to tell him that Walter Edgar cited my thesis in his book.
Right.
That was a big deal to my dad.
Yeah, I got you. We should have you as a scholar in residence so you can finish that. Update it, all right?
It'd be difficult for me to think of myself as a scholar because I have such respect for you and others on our faculty who really are great academics who do a great job for our students and our institution. But it would be a fun project to do. And I really want to answer some of the hard questions and have an idea about where things are going in our state. And maybe talk about what could change or what people should do differently in order to have, particularly on the Democrat Party side, what could they do differently to have a greater impact in statewide elections?
Make it more competitive, right?
Because I think there is some a lot of times we get drawn into national issues, and there are more state-specific issues that are very important to the people here.
Sure. All right, well, that's a nice segue to some of the op-eds that you've been writing over the past few years, and you do a lot of them. And I enjoy reading them. I always think they're really well done and interesting. But could you share with us some of your kind of more pressing concerns, the things that are close to your heart as chairman of the Board of Trustees, and that also speak to the future of the university? What are some of the initiatives, both kind of in the immediate short term, but then let's imagine what this place is like 15 years from now?
So when I think about writing the op-eds, I first think about my role as chair. So under our policies, the chairman of the Board of Trustees is allowed to speak publicly about the board on behalf of the board. Other trustees are not.
Okay.
But for me to be able to write publicly about what we're doing at the university, I really need to have the blessing of the board to do that. Yep. Now, I'm not circulating drafts or anything, but we're talking about these issues as a board. And what I want is for the people of South Carolina to understand what we're doing here at the flagship, their flagship institution, because we think of ourselves as the university for South Carolina. And we get substantial investment from the state, taxpayer-funded money, and there's a national issue for us to talk about there, but it's important that we communicate with the citizens who are supporting us about what we're doing and why we're doing it. We also talk to our students and their families who are paying tuition, substantial investors in our university. And I think it's important that we in higher ed, generally speaking, have that conversation with the public. Whether you're a public institution, flagship like ours, or a private, we all take public money. And I think in some places there's a mindset among members of the higher ed community that we should just get the money and whatever those people say really doesn't matter. I disagree. I think that we as leaders in higher ed need to have that conversation and explain what we're doing and why we add value and why they should invest. The members of the public should invest in higher ed. When President Emeritus came in his opening comments after his selection, he said that he wanted to explain to state leaders and the public the value of the University of South Carolina and what we contribute to the state and how we want to partner with state leaders in serving our state. That's a very similar conversation that people like Michael Crow at Arizona State, a very innovative long-term president there, and other leaders are having right now. We need to be having a conversation about our contributions to the public good, and fulfilling our mission, because a lot of times the conversations are revolving around what a few very elite privates do who on the whole, educate very few students.
Right.
It's public flagships and the land grants that are really educating the most people in our country and contributing the most amount of research, as a body, to developing new knowledge in our country. And that gets misplaced because that's not what's covered in the media.
Yep.
And so part of what I'm trying to do is, one, explain to the people of South Carolina and our stakeholders what we're doing here at the University of South Carolina. Why would you invest in higher ed? Two, I want to contribute to the national conversation about how we serve the public good, and really to help inform a larger public that the role of higher ed is to educate students and to develop knowledge through research. And it's not our job to be a platform for political issues or culture wars. That happens. That's not our mission. That's not why we're here. But it's incumbent upon us to explain that to the public. I do enjoy talking about some of the initiatives. So one of the op-eds covers our decision to provide greater access and affordability to South Carolinians. So we made the decision a couple years ago that we would grant automatic admission to every student in South Carolina who graduated in the top 10% of their class. We felt like that was an access issue or opportunity because there are people, students, families who are at schools in let's say the I-95 corridor. Their parents didn't go to college. They may have limited support in helping fill out college applications and understanding what the opportunity is. And we wanted those young people to know there's a place for you at the University of South Carolina. With that, we had to address affordability. So for those students and their families who have family incomes of $80,000 or less, we are going to cover your tuition and fees once you put in your lottery scholarship, your Pell Grants, that kind of thing. Then we'll cover the rest. We don't want affordability to be a barrier to those students coming to the University of South Carolina. Some other schools have since done similar things, and we're glad that they're doing that to help serve our state. But that was something that I think we wanted to broadcast. So op-eds are one way of doing it. The most recent project that we're very proud of is the state's decision to invest in a neurological science hospital, a very specialized hospital here in South Carolina. Nationally, there are 3 or 4 hospitals in our country that can deal with severe trauma, severe cases of stroke, things like that are brain-centered. One's in Chicago, and Dr. Amarias was the president of that institution that has that hospital, so there's a great connection there and great experience there. There's one in Seattle, there's one in Phoenix. Questions about whether or not Johns Hopkins has one. Some of the experts say yes, others say no. But for us, there's not one in the Southeast.
Right.
And so if you're a family who has a family member who has dealt with terrible trauma, severe issues with stroke, you either have to be left untreated with the latest technology, no access to the latest technology and procedures, or you have to travel. And most families cannot travel, cannot afford to pick up and move for 2 months. Right. And so our state leaders decided to invest in this project. It's a hospital for the state, and that's how we view it. Is one that should not be competitive with other hospitals because we only want those patients that should be sent somewhere else for the highest level of care. Yep. That's too expensive for most hospitals to afford, but it will all be consolidated for one place for our state, in our state, for people to access. But that's a project we talked about, just statewide through those op-eds, things like that. Also talking about the state of higher ed. We've dealt with anti-Semitism on campuses across the country, and there's one that talks about how we dealt with it here and how we believe that on a college campus you are not immune from state or federal laws. You're not given a license to harass and intimidate your fellow student, and so here we're going to enforce the law. We are going to enforce our policies about setting up tents or taking over buildings. That's not protest. That's not free speech. In other places, leaders have allowed that to happen. That is not free speech. There are certain very limited restrictions on time and place, manner. We work with fire to make sure that our policies are in line with free speech standards nationally. But taking over buildings, vandalizing facilities, intimidating, harassing other students is not free speech. And so that's something I wrote about, just to let people know that that's where we are. And we're part of the national conversation.
Right. Yeah, in other words, maintain the learning environment, right? Because that's what we do.
A safe learning environment.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
that should be fundamental
Yeah.
to what you're doing in higher ed.
Yeah.
And if your students do not feel safe, and you got one group either blocking access to university facilities or outright trying to intimidate them because of their religion, that is not a safe environment, and it should be abhorrent to any state leader and any higher ed leader to do that, to allow that.
And so you've been, I mean, you do a lot in kind of communicating what the university is doing. But let's project, by way of extended conclusion to our chat here, what the university looks like in 15 years' time. Because South Carolina is undergoing this renaissance, right? I mean, it was the wealthiest colony at the Revolutionary War, the wealthiest state, or one of the wealthiest states. Then it kind of slips after the Civil War, but it's coming back. I mean, was last year's, is correct, Thad, that more people moved to South Carolina than any other state?
I heard that. I don't keep track of those stats, but I heard that. And we are seeing that phenomenon where not only families are moving to South Carolina in greater numbers, but we are a institution of choice for students from all across the country. And so there is an ongoing debate about out-of-state students and in-state students. And what I would say to that is, one, we educate more South Carolinians today, and I can tell you from the next class we're about to have, it'll be even more South Carolinians than we ever had before. Yeah. And so we do have a good number of out-of-state students. They pay higher tuition dollars, and they underwrite the education we provide to the state students, so we can keep state tuition down, which we've done for now 7 years in a row. With the help from state government, policies that we have in place here at the university, we kept the price flat for our in-state students, but out-of-state students do pay more. And so we also bring different perspectives. When you have out-of-state students, people from other communities, different background, it's a more well-rounded experience for our students, and particularly in co-curricular activities. So we are an institution of choice. We are looking at the upcoming or now impending dip in high school age graduates. And so you see states who are feeder states to us are now trying to keep their students. Right. But we broke 60,000 applications. We're going to have, I expect we'll have more than 40,000 students on campus here in Columbia. So we are growing. Now, that growth, for the sake of growth, is not where we want to be. We also have to make sure the infrastructure is in place. So we just passed adopted a master facilities plan that we call USC Next. The president and his team have been working with us to look at projects to address housing, classroom space, lab space. We are looking at new student union space. So you got to have the infrastructure there to educate all these folks. We have engaged in a 2-year process of hiring 100 new faculty here at the university, while other institutions are freezing hiring, freezing expenses. We have been the beneficiaries of decisions made several years ago to save some money and to not spend everything that comes in the door. And we've used some of that money to pay for the new med school building, which is, thanks to our savings and state government, will be built with no debt. We have funds available for the president, and we use this in recruiting the president to the university, funds that the president can use for certain academic programs. Back in 2017, we as a board, working with, at that time, Dr. Pastides, made a decision to cut administrative expenses by 3%, then again the next year by 2%. All that money that was saved went straight into an academic fund. And there have been different ways it was going to be used, but ultimately now it's being used by the president. And that has enabled us to engage in that faculty hiring initiative, which we needed to have growth in our faculty to serve our students. So what do we look like in 15 years? I think we're a large flagship institution that, like we are now, we're going to be a little bit bigger than we are because we're building out the infrastructure. But we are one that has really grown the research enterprise. And so I think with the investments we're making in the research enterprise, you're going to see us competing more directly with some of those other institutions that are in the AAU category as far as the amount of research. You'll see a very modern university that has preserved historic and traditional buildings, but a very modern environment to learn, and one that is I hope, this probably trustees beyond me, but making sure that we're really focused on our mission. And we're focused on educating young people. We're focused on developing knowledge through research. And we're really aligned with the state and the state's needs. I'll give you another example. When Molina Rowley decided to make a very large gift to name the School of Engineering, he didn't do that on a whim. He did an extensive amount of research. He met with me. He met with others at the university. He met with state leaders. He wanted to know that the university and state leaders would continue to invest in engineering, because he wasn't going to just give money and just hope things worked out.
Right.
He wanted to know that it would be coupled with other investment for the benefit of the engineering program, because that's a real need in our state, to have the engineers that are that are serving the state in a variety of ways, developing new technologies, and a school that really can thrive with a little more investment. And that's what he bought into. He wanted us to be committed. We were already, so that was a very nice alignment. But that's where we saw both university and state leadership and a donor working together to serve the future needs of the state.
I suspect that's also true of the McCausland gift from Bonnie and Peter McCausland. That same kind of recognition that this is a joint enterprise and this is designed to help all of us get to where we need to be.
It is, and Peter McCausland, and his vision is one where he wants funds going to help students and help faculty.
Yeah.
And he sees the need for growth even in our largest college. And so he's investing in faculty and chair positions and research that will benefit our state. And he is an out-of-state student who came to South Carolina. He left, but never forgot the impact the University of South Carolina had on him. Yeah. So that's the same type of investment. So I see us as an institution very much aligned with the state. We have the plaque at the foot of the horseshoe there on Sumter Street, where it quotes President Jones, who gave a speech in 1963, I think, May of '63, where he coined the phrase that the University of South Carolina is a faithful index to the ambitions and fortunes of the state. And so as you see the University of South Carolina succeed, you're seeing the state succeed, and vice versa. As the state succeeds, we succeed. And so we're very much in close partnership with our state and our mission to serve the state, but also engaged on a national level in research and different issues that we're thinking about nationally and contributing to the national dialogue.
You've given us a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, and ultimately I think all of that makes perfect sense because there's a vibe here. There's a vibe right now. Things are looking really good. It's a good place to be.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because
I feel it in the classroom.
Well, and I want to hear from faculty. That's good to hear because I want to know that we're doing the things culturally where people feel like there's that excitement. I spoke to a University 101 class last year, and there was a young freshman, obviously, who was from the upper part of the state, and he didn't look like you or me. He also had long hair and a bit of a shy guy. But I asked the students, all right, why the University of South Carolina? What do you like? I mean, what do you don't like? I asked them both. I want to hear both. And he raised his hand and said, everybody's so nice here, and I'm really enjoying it. And I could see where he came from in a very rural community. Maybe he wasn't having the great experience as a high school student, but here he found his place, and he was just talking about how nice everybody was to him, and how much he liked his professors. And so just culturally, I thought, all right, this feels good. This is where we want to be. And to hear faculty say we're doing the right thing as an institution, that's good. I also hear when faculty don't think we're doing the right thing, and that's good too. I want the feedback. I want to have a professional discussion. Shouting matches don't help, but I do want to have a dialogue, and it's good to challenge each other, to have conflicting ideas, and let's work through those issues. And I think hearing that from you is very meaningful, and I welcome input from others. I've heard other faculty members tell me what they think, good and bad.
So, talking about professional discussions, I've taken up a lot of your time today, but I'd like to have you back, and you can come back and talk about whatever you want if you have a certain...
I have an idea.
All right.
All right. So, I'm a listener to the podcast. Right. I've kind of gone through, and I've noticed that you've never explained and been interviewed how you, as a gentleman from England, becomes a scholar in Southern history, Southern studies, and ends up at the University of South Carolina. Because, when I was, a student, I heard about these Europeans that are very interested in the South. And then, of course, here you are as the director of the Institute with the British accent that may catch people off guard when they think about a Southern Studies program at South Carolina. So what I would like to do, and this is your show, but if we could flip the interview, let me sit over there and let me ask you some questions about how you got here, and really let's find out how a British gentleman, a Liverpool FC fan, ends up in Columbia, South Carolina, leading the Institute for Southern Studies.
All right. You have a deal. I like the idea, but only because we have a fantastic editor, Samaj, who can make me look good in those answers and basically take care of me, right?
Excellent, yeah. Okay. Well, he did a nice job with your makeup earlier today.
Well, I know he normally does some hair for me, but, it's not working today.
Well, I think a working title should be something along the lines from fish and chips to fried chicken. A conversation with your host, Mark Smith, something along those lines.
All
that
right.
we can help your listeners understand a little bit more about the host and how you, with that accent, got here in South Carolina and is running our institute.
All right, so it's basically the secret British invasion revealed, right? That's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I'm actually watching right now the series Turn about the George Washington spies and the Revolutionary War. So I might have some very tough questions for you.
I might have some very weak answers. Chairman Thad Westbrook, thank you so much for everything that you do for this university, for this community, and thank you for being on Take on the South.
Thank you for having me.
That was our Take on the South. Let us know yours. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at U of SC South. Be sure to click and subscribe. Take on the South is produced by the Institute for Southern Studies and the McCausland College of Arts and Sciences at the University of South Carolina. Special thanks to Professor Dave Garner of the University of South Carolina School of Music for composing our soundtrack. Tune in next time for another Take on the South.